Welcome back. We're 6 months into the year of 2023, and in those 6 months, at least 4 instances of anti-India hate, anti-India propaganda has been reported from across Canada. From defacing temples to portraying former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's assassination on a tableau. Even the High Commissioner in Surrey was not spared by some of these pro-Khalistani elements who heckled and hurled slurs at the Indian community there. Today, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar made perhaps the sharpest attack on the Canadian administration. S. Jaishankar said that Canada has often been seen as sympathetic to the separatist cause. They have refused to take action against such elements because they are constrained by their vote bank compulsions. S. Jaishankar said that Khalistani issue has been impacting the ties between the two countries in many ways in the recent past. In most of these cases, there has been inaction, and that is what is causing this strain in relations, was the clear message. He made it clear that for India, how Canada has dealt with the Khalistani issue has been a long-standing concern. India is often forced to respond as such actions of Canadian soil impinge upon national security of India and integrity as well. That was the clear message that S. Jaishankar sent. Now, it's not just India that has called out the Trudeau administration. These voices have been coming from within as well there in Canada. In fact, the Canadian MP, a former MP now, Ramesh Sangha from Toronto, was thrown out of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party for raising the issue of pandering to Khalistani separatists and harming the relationship with India. So if that in fact is a reality, where do we go from here? How does New Delhi ensure that these separatist elements do not run amok spreading propaganda against the Indian state on foreign soil? We'll find those answers on debate number 2.
How Canada has dealt with the Khalistani issue has been a long-standing concern, because very frankly, they seem to be driven by vote bank politics, and their responses have all been, to the best of my understanding, actually constrained by what they regard as vote bank compulsions on them. We made it very clear, and I've done so sometimes even in public, which is that, if there are activities which are permitted from Canada, which impinge on our sovereignty, territorial integrity, on our security, then, we will have to respond.
Joining me on this debate, Charan Singh Sapra, spokesperson of the Congress Party, S.S. Channi, BJP spokesperson from Punjab, activist Puneet Sahani also with me, and author Terry Milewski also joining us on this broadcast. And Terry, I'd like to begin by asking you, do you believe there is a separatist lobby in the power corridors of Canada?
Oh, there's absolutely no question about it. We have had a long history, as Mr. Jaishankar has pointed out, of pandering to Khalistani separatists in Canada. Politicians always basically supine, lying down and playing dead in the face of what amounts to a huge disinformation campaign. It's still going on today. As recently as 50 minutes ago, somebody tweeted about how, it was India that blew up Air India flight 182 in 1985. They did it. It was all India. All the evidence against the Air India bombers was rigged by the Indian government, and this kind of nonsense, and the Canadian government says nothing. It is time, obviously, for Canada to make a clean break with this nonsense and to stand up and say, look, we are not going to come to Vaisakhi parades that praise and glorify various Khalistani assassins through the years. We're not going to pander to you anymore, and we're going to say this publicly because it's time for India to play its part. The Indian politicians, including Mr. Jaishankar, to be very, very, very blunt and saying, you want access to the booming Indian marketplace, you want a free trade agreement. We're not going to deal with any minister that comes here with that story who is not going to publicly and explicitly condemn this disinformation by Khalistani separatists in Canada.
Absolutely. That line has to be drawn, and that line has been drawn, at least in terms of words. We've seen that, S.S. Channi, as far as Mr. S. Jaishankar, the highest perhaps at the level of which diplomatically this can be taken up with any country. But are we going to be seeing action? This has been taken diplomatically with Canada in the past, with other countries where we've seen these kind of instances happen as well.
Well,
Mr. Jaishankar is very, very right in highly condemning the attitude of the Canadian government. But they must know that they are dealing with a very, very strong sovereign. We won't let them to play with the sovereignty or territorial integrity of the country. I am wondering, even the people over there, 99.9% they have gone for living and for the betterment of their own prosperity. They are not really concerned, but some elements which are being encouraged by the Trudeau government especially, they are raising these kind of issues. But I must say and tell them again that once it's going to burn their house as well, because these guys are not going to spare them. And back home, there is no issue. We are from Punjab. There is nobody talks about this kind of Khalistan and what kind of Khalistan they are talking about. Let them identify the territorial parts of which maybe in the Pakistan, maybe in the Afghanistan, as they call it, the regime of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So what nonsense they are talking about? Half of the Punjab has gone to Haryana and Himachal, and even Chandigarh is union territory. Whatever is left, they are going to spoil even that. And there is no support of any kind. But the Canadian government, they are not bothered about the letters of regulatory and even other kind of requests, and they are just playing to the vote bank politics. But ultimately, it will definitely burn their own house, because with the murders which are taking place, maybe of Niger, maybe of many others, and especially their crash. I don't know what kind of people they are. They are known for civilization. What kind of behavior they are rendering and encouraging these kind of activities, which no human being on this earth will really support or promote. I think what is wrong, I don't know what is wrong with the Trudeau and his administration. This is not going to be taken very softly, and it won't be really tolerated. And we are making human and genuine request that please look into all this and don't let if they have any issue, let them come home. Let them raise these issues. Nobody is bothered about all that. And they are letting, rather one day I was having a discussion and I told them, if you want a Khalistan, why don't you have it there? You are living there, your children are there, your own everything is there. You have it, and there are plenty of land available. But what kind of issues you are raising? Maybe it Pannu, maybe Linda, maybe Broad, whatever. So they must learn some lessons from these activities, and they must, as a civilized nation, they should support Indian government and its concern.
And like Mr. Jaishankar pointed out, that it has impacted ties between the two countries, that see each other as allies. That is something that should be a cause for concern for the Canadian government, Charan Singh Sapra, isn't it? But this has been going on for far too long. It's not just Canada. We've seen this happen in several other countries, including Australia as well. Why do you think we haven't been able to nip this in the bud? Why do you think pro-Khalistani elements feel that they can actually get away by doing things like this?
See, to some extent, Mr. Jaishankar is correct by saying that it is a vote bank politics, because rightly, if I may remind you, that Mr. Trudeau is running a minority government which is supported by National Democratic Party. And this National Democratic Party is headed by one Mr. Jagmeet Singh, who is a Khalistani sympathizer. So naturally, Trudeau will be, bending towards this National Democratic Party, and hence he doesn't want to take a severe action. But on the part of Indian government, I would like to say that mere lip service is not going to work. I would like to give you 2-3 instances now. Like on 2nd June, the NSA of Canada, Mr. Jody Thomas, he openly criticized Indian government. And he warned the Indian government by saying that don't meddle into Canadian affairs. This is our internal matter. So how can it be an internal matter when they are talking about Khalistan? The Indian government or Mr. Jaishankar or the NSA, Mr. Ajit Doval, should have reacted. They never reacted to it. Now Mr. Terry was talking about the Air India bomb blast, in which 323 people died and 22 probably crew members also died. The Canadian people, they had a march to commemorate the death anniversary of the killer, death anniversary of the terrorist who bombed that Air India flight. That was the worst ever terrorist act, happened in 1985. They celebrated it. Indian government did not react. So there are so many instances happening in Canada month by month, but Indian government is not reacting to that. Mr. Jaishankar has definitely reacted today, but I treat that as mere lip service. and lip service is not going to work. On other hand, we are seeing there is a Indo-Canadian sort of gang war going on there. Mr. Niger has been shot. Mr. Jimmy, there's another Gunda, Jimmy Sandhu. He was shot dead. Every week there is some shoot going on over there, and people have been killed. So these are the issues which are linked to India. These are the issues of concern. Indian government should take it on a global platform. We should treat this as a global terrorism, act of global terrorism. We should see that from where the funding is coming to them.
Sure.
The funding needs to be tracked and stopped.
Sure. More needs to be done by the Indian government. Ms. Channi says the opposition, says the Congress party. That yes, this is one step in the right direction, the kind of words that S. Jaishankar has used, but it shouldn't stop at just words. We need to see action is what the opposition says.
Absolutely, he's right, and you are right too. We are not going to leave it there, which is just a one-to-one kind of concern and sharing the the kind of deep deep wounds which we are having. But it will be definitely raised at the level of UN, and it will be a global issue for the other countries as well. And we have the kind of action which has being taken in case of UK, where Indian mission was attacked. And similarly, they should be thankful to Mr. Modi, who has cleared the blacklist. These guys were not in a position to, most of them, to visit back home India. But he was so kind and they cleared. But again, I think they are attempting to that we have another blacklist so that these people are brought to book. But ultimately, these people will be definitely brought to book, and our agencies are very active. Maybe NIA, maybe RAW and all. They won't be really spared, and we are going to have them back home.
That's really the hope, but it's easier said than done, Puneet Sahani, isn't it? Because we do have to depend on the administrations of those particular countries to actually take that action. Now, as far as Canada goes, and like we've been discussing, that there seems to be some political compulsions, which is why there has been no action that has been taken. And then we see these separatist groups, these separatist elements run completely amok. Where does that leave India then? And what do we do next, Puneet Sahani?
No, Poonam, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I would like to go to specifics. So, Mr. Jaishankar, he has said vote bank politics. It's not vote bank politics. It's terrorism. So first say it with the name. Like if you take out this tableau of Mrs. Gandhi and, of this assassin, this is terrorism. And, like how they bully everyone. And, what he's saying, we have expressed. Terry can tell you, the Canadian ambassador of that time, he wrote his autobiography, that Mrs. Gandhi would dress him down and personally say, what is Canada doing? And Canada did nothing. So I want Mr. Jaishankar not to, say big words and wave a twig. I want him to have speak softly but use a big stick. So what has the Indian government done? This Mr. Spokesperson of Mr. BJP was saying, we have removed the blacklist. You should put the blacklist. You are removing the deterrent. Have you proscribed the WSO, which is doing this? You haven't done it. We have the high commissioner level diplomatic relations with Canada. You can degrade it to the charge d'affaires level. This Captain Amrinder Singh was saying we should take Canada to the UN sanction. So again, if you think you are by saying big words or condemnation or by convincing that you can convince Canada, they are not doing it. I want to give you an example, Poonam. It's very important. So, they were talking of this biggest terrorist attack. You see, when this terrorist attack happened, the Canadian politicians are talking like it has happening like lightning or flood, that we condemned it and it is very sad. But they have not said who has done it. And this is actually very important because what Terry was saying, they are spreading this misinformation that Indian government has done it. Whereas the inquiry commission found it completely that Mr. Talvinder Singh Parmar, terrorist of Babbar Khalsa, he was the architect and the mastermind of this terrorist attack. And nobody has said it. And even this Mrs. Gandhi tableau, I was the one who raised this noise about it. And then it became news. So you see, they have the national politician who has condemned it. His name is Paul Pieve, who is like the right of the center, kind of like BJP party in Canada. That person did not have the guts to do it on Twitter. He went on his personal website and there he wrote a statement of condemnation. So, in future, if somebody asked him, if somebody asked him, he said, yeah, I done it. So I had to dig out that statement and put it on Twitter. So it's not like, there is not a vote bank because the Sikhs are against it. But it's a Muslim brotherhood like this WSO, which has infiltrated and which is a pressure group. And all these politicians are basically, working in their hands. And this was exactly what happened in 1980s when they bombed the airplane. And this will happen again if they don't do it. And India should not just say big words, but actually use a stick. And you have a lot of things to do, and they are not doing it. I don't want any statements or something. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I point out that there is a good example of that? Somebody mentioned Captain Amarinder Singh, who during his term of office in, I believe, April of 2017, refused to receive the Canadian Defence Minister, no less, Harjit Sajjan, on the grounds that he believed that Sajjan was a Khalistani sympathizer. And what happened in response to waving that big stick? Canada caved. Minister Sajjan was forced to put out a statement saying, no, he absolutely did not support an independent Khalistan. And then Captain Amarinder graciously acknowledged his victory. And when Trudeau came in 2018 on his ill-fated journey, Captain Amarinder did, in fact, receive Sajjan. There's an example. But if there's any example that should light a fire under both sides of this, it is the obscene spectacle that we just saw 2 days on Sunday. We saw a rally. Puneet mentioned this, a rally, but as bad as he made it sound, it's actually worse. The rally was of Khalistanis waving Khalistan Zindabad flags, going to have their rally at the Air India Memorial. They befouled the Air India Memorial, lined up by the names of the 331 dead, and celebrated their big day of Khalistan. I mean, it was obscene. They basically danced on the graves of the victims. That, I think, ought to light a fire under this, under both sides of this, and certainly under the Indian side, to say, we've had enough. You have got to speak up about this. But Puneet is absolutely correct that we look in vain for clear, explicit public denunciations, not mealy-mouthed hidden ones, to make clear that Canada's not going to put up with this either. That would be a good start.
Absolutely. And when is that start going to come is the question many are asking, Mr. Channi. We've seen the kind of condemnation and kind of message that has come to the fore from S. Jaishankar today. But actions speak louder than words, and we need that action to happen.
Yes.
I just can't disclose what kind of action will be taken. But the whole world by now knows what Mr. Modi is and how strong he's the leader globally. And India is very, very strong sovereign nation, and we won't let anybody to play with our sovereignty and integrity of the country. And there are no numbers. I don't know what far they have been allowed to, make so much hue and cry, noise and all over, and they are playing havoc with every kind of thing. But I think ultimately they will be taken care of, and we are not going to, spare anybody who's playing with the.
Sure, but how is that going to happen, Ms. Channi? That's really the question. How are we going to see that happen?
It has happened in case of UK. It has happened to some extent in case of Australia. It will happen in case of Canada as well. But we have been treating them as a civilized nation, which they are no longer, and they don't know what the UN is, what the other treaties are, and what kind of relations should be there. And it's very, very bad for the bilateral relation, trade and FTA and all those kind of things. They are going to pay, the country will, every country is looking at India for the business, and what kind of the government over there.
Absolutely. More reason why Canada should ensure that these things are dealt with, Puneet Sahni, isn't it? Because a lot is at stake. Today we had the External Affairs Minister even come out and say that we know that this has been a long-standing concern and it is impacting ties between the two countries. It can't be that India is the only one losing out. Puneet.
You see, Poonam, I just want to point, it's not the numbers. You see the influence that they take out Mrs. Gandhi's tableau. And, no national politician condemns it. Or MPs, what they have done. And it's such a, I don't know what kind of example they are setting for the Sikhs. I felt so ashamed that they want to show this world that, we are some, like what kind of animals we are. We are shooting an unarmed woman, an old woman, and take pleasure and, saying it. Anyways. You see, on the other side, this Gurdwara president, a thug and a plumber and a terrorist. And, he almost certainly died for, internal gang warfare. He died, and all these Khalistanis put pressure, and all the Canadian MPs are tweeting for him. They don't tweet when a democratically elected woman prime minister is, perforated with bullets. And, this rally is taken out for, hours. And kilometers. I forgot it was 6.5 hours or something like that. No major politicians said, we condemn this. And you see publicly on Twitter. But when this thug is killed, and he's a criminal, and there is a record, he lied to the immigration officers again and again, he made a fake claim, and he's a plumber. And this he was an enemy of Malik. And that is a, but the MPs are dying and they are saying, yeah, India must have done it.
So
All
it's
the
cutting
evidence
across
is Paramahansa.
national parties in Canada. Charan Singh Sapra, go ahead. You had a point to make.
I just wanted to say that the Indian government should have a political will to make a comprehensive policy. We should have a comprehensive policy to tackle this, this issue of Khalistan, which is again reoccurring now. This issue, if not countered now, will become a bigger issue, and it will be a pain for our country also and for Canada also. The Canada government should be made to realize all this. So we should, even Indian government should have a political will, and they should make a comprehensive policy to tackle this Khalistani problem. I agree with one of the panelists who said that these Khalistani sympathizers, they are doing only for their own relevance. To be
Absolutely, and that's not just the case with Canada. It's with everywhere else, every other country where we're seeing these kind of provocations, which is why we need our message to be sent loud and clear, and action needs to be ensured. I have to unfortunately leave it at that. I'm running out of time, but I thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast. And with that, it's a wrap from my side here on this edition.